Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to Programming in Python, and we're on lesson 5 this week. It's great to be back. I am joined here today with Amanda, and
hi guys.
And we've got the rest of the team in the background helping us out with any questions or anything else that we need sorted. So if you've got any questions throughout the video, please do pop them in, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So we'll kick off with our home challenge from the last day. Hopefully you got to give it a go and it went okay, but we'll work through it now. So what you had to do was you had to get the computer or get your code to generate two random numbers. You then had to multiply those two numbers together and save that answer to a variable. We would then get the program to print out the sum of the multiplication and kind of ask a question to see if the user could get the question right. The user would then have to guess or give an answer for the question, and the program would decide if it's right or wrong, and we'd kind of move on from there. So we might jump over to our notebooks, our Azure notebooks, and see if we can get this working. Okay, so hopefully we got to give this a go and it was okay. All right, so here I've copied over the instructions for the home challenge, and we'll just take it one by one, step by step, and we'll see if we can kind of work through them. Okay, so the first thing that we had to do was generate two random numbers. Okay, and we hopefully know from the last time that we needed a library. So we import our library, and the library that we import is random. Okay, and with that library now, we should be able to use the keywords or the functions that are in that library to create random numbers. So I'm going to have number 1 equals so we've got random. Sorry, slow there. Random or a random dot rand int is how we go and generate a random number. Okay, and we want the random number between 1 and 10, let's say. Then we're going to create our second random number, so we're going to use the same sort of code with a different variable name. So number 2 is going to equal to random dot rand int between 1 and 10. Okay, right. So now we've got two random numbers, and we got to go and get the answer. So if we multiply these two random numbers together, what will the answer be? So we'll create a variable called answer equals, and it will be number 1 multiplied by, and the multiply by sign is the star symbol. So we've got multiplied by number 2.
Damien, you might just check your rand int, I think, for number 2 there. I think.
Oh, thanks, Amanda. We probably would have got an error there.
Save it. Yeah, just to save that happening.
That's great. Rand int there. Perfect. Great. So now we've got our answer, but we need to now engage with the person. So let's see, what have we done? We've got our two random numbers, we've multiplied them, and we've saved our answer to a variable. Now we need to write out the sum of the first number multiplied by the second number. So here we'll just put in a print statement. Okay, we might just give a little title or a little explanation. So this game asks you to multiply two numbers. Okay, and then we might put in our multiplication. Now I'm going to put in a \t here, and what this does is this just indents your comment a little bit, so it doesn't actually print out the \t symbols. It just indents your code a little bit, and it can make it look a little bit neater. So I'm going to go \t, and then I'm going to print out number 1, and then I need to put in the symbol X, and that's going to be my multiply sign, and then I need another comma here so that I can put in my number 2. Okay, So I've got number 1, the X sign to show that it's multiplied, number 2, and then we're going to look for it to equal. So I might just run that to see if that runs properly first, just in case I've made an error to start. But when I run that, so this game asks you to multiply 2 numbers, and it says 6 multiplied by 3. So that's looking pretty good so far.
Yeah, looks good.
Great. So now we need to get the user to input their answer. So we've already used the word answer as a variable name, so I can't use that again. So I'm going to use the word guess as the user's guess for the sum. And this guess is going to be an integer, because our numbers will all be whole numbers here. So int input. So now the computer will wait for an input, and now we got to do our checks. So we've got our 2 variables. We've got our answer and we've got our guess. So we'll have our if statement, which is our keyword, and we're going to check first if the guess, whatever the user entered, is the same as whatever the computer worked out the answer to be. And if those 2 things are the same, then they must have got the answer right. So we've got our print statement, and we'll just say correct. Right. Correct. And then if it's not the same, so there's 2 other cases that we had. So we could, if it's not correct, we could just say it's wrong, but I think the home challenge wanted us to do a little bit more. So if the answer is wrong, the computer should tell the user if their answer is too high or too low and give the correct answer. Okay, so here we're going to have our elif statement because we've got more than 2 things. The answer could either be right, or it could be too low, or it could be too high. So there's 3 different options here, and that's why we need an elif in here. So if guess, so if the answer that the user gave or thought that was right, if that is smaller or less than the actual answer, then we're going to have a little comment here that says print, we'll say wrong. We'll say the answer is too low. And then we'll also print out the answer. So answer is not in quotation marks there because we're actually going to take in the answer to the sum. And then the final thing that we have is elif, and it'll be very similar to what we had there, except we need to turn the sign around. So if the guess that the user gives is bigger than the answer that the computer worked out, we're also going to say wrong. So I'm actually going to copy this code here because often it can save you a lot of time if you copy code. So wrong, the answer, but this time it won't be too low, it'll be too high. And then it will print out the answer. So we might just test this and see if it works. Amanda, I might get you to help me out with some answers here.
Oh God, you're putting
10
me on the spot
multiplied by 2.
Oh, that's okay. I can do that one. 20.
20.
Oh, sorry, we go wrong. We'll go wrong, will we?
We'll go right first and make sure that that bit works.
Right, okay, okay.
And this is actually so well done, Amanda. Great maths.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this is actually good to talk just quickly about testing. It's always good to kind of try and test all the possible solutions if you can. So we've tested a correct answer. So now, Amanda, you don't have to worry too much about this one. You can get this one wrong if you want.
Okay, well, I'll say 5.
5. Okay. So 5 is less than the actual answer. So we should be getting wrong. Your answer is too low. And then it prints out the correct answer for us there, which is great. And we'll do one more where we get an answer that's too big. So 1 multiplied by 5. You're getting very easy sums here.
It really is, isn't it?
Yeah.
12.
12. Okay. And here, same idea. We get wrong. Your answer is too high, and it gives us the answer as well.
Excellent.
Okay. So
that's actually quite clear, isn't it, Amy? Like the conditions really lay it out nicely for us.
Yeah. And if you can get your head around the greater than and less than and things like that, it can make if statements and elif statements very easy, and like it does really tidy up your code a lot.
And there's a question here, Damien. I might just ask it now instead of the end because it kind of ties into here. So why aren't we using else? So if, elif, and why isn't else the last option there?
That's a good point. So we could use else here as well. So as long as you've taken into account all the possible things, and we could, so there's only 3 options here. The guess could be equal to the answer, the guess could be less than the answer, or the guess could be greater than the answer. So we could actually change this here to just say else.
Okay.
Perfect. And that's the only, like, if the answer is not equal or it's not less, the only other option is that the answer is greater than.
Perfect.
So and it's really just up to the coder which they kind of prefer to use there.
Yeah, so some people like to see it written out exactly with the comparison, whereas others might kind of go for the else as their last possible option.
Yeah, so, and that's exactly it. Some people really do like to make sure they've hit every box by using loads of elifs, but some people just like to finish it off with an else too. And that's really preference of the coder.
Perfect.
But a very good question.
Great. Yeah. So well done to everyone, I suppose, who might have got that. They can pause there, and if they want to double check their code and stuff. Yeah. And then, because we're going to get started now, Damien, aren't we, on new stuff today? Exciting. Yes.
Yeah, your favorites.
My favorites, yeah.
I will just say before we move on from this, your program may not look exactly like this, and there's so many different variations. So if you did it a bit of a different way and you're still getting it to work perfectly, that's super, and just keep going with that. So yeah, we're going to move on today and we're going to look at lists. But before we introduce lists, we kind of want to see what we need lists for, because they're unbelievably useful, but it's like some people think that you could just kind of get away with variables and stuff. So hopefully we'll be able to kind of show that. So we're going to quickly put together a little program that kind of replicates a bit of an online shop. Now it's going to be pretty simple, but it kind of has the same idea. So if you want to kind of take a look at what we're typing up here, we'll kind of talk through it. And then if you want to pause it and copy it over to your notebook or type it up as we're going, that's up to you. So we'll just say this is going to be a small shop, and it's going to be an online shop. So we're getting people to order things online. So I'm just going to put in a little print statement at the start to say this is an online shop. And then the way it's going to work is you select the number of the item you want to buy. Okay, I think I spelled everything there right, but hopefully we're all right. So we're going to have a couple of items here. So I'm going to say print bracket. Now, again, I'm going to put in a little \t for just to push in my items a little bit, and you'll kind of see it when it prints out that it might be just a little bit neater. And item 1 is going to be basketball. Now, if you're not into sports, you don't have to use the same items as we use. Amanda, you might use different items if you were doing this. But
yeah, I like food, so I might go for a food shopping list. But I also like sports, as you know, so yeah, I'm happy enough with the sports items here. But yeah, people could do clothes. They could literally do whatever you want here. We're just going to get a feel for what happens when we have multiple items involved.
Exactly right. So I'm just going to put in 3 items in our shop. Now, most shops will have more than this, or they're not very good shops if they only have 3, but we'll work with what we got. So my 3 items are, we've got a basketball, a football, and a surfboard in our shop. Okay. And then we're going to ask the user what item would they like to buy. So we'll put in a little question. So we've kind of set it at the top. So maybe we'll just leave it there. So select the number of the item you want to buy. So we'll have item equals int input, exactly as we've had for an awful lot of other kind of programs we've worked with. So what the user will do here is they'll either select number 1 or number 2 or number 3, and that will represent the item that they want to buy. If the user, so if item equals, so if the user picks the number 1, number 1 is going to be saved in item here. I'll scroll down here a little bit so it's a bit higher on the screen. Item is going to be number 1. So if item equals number 1, that means that the user has picked that they want a basketball. So I'm going to say that the, now what variable name will I use here? So I'm going to say item to buy equals, and I'm going to have it as basketball. Okay, so I might just explain this once more. So if the user picks the number 1, if they enter number 1 in here, that means they want to buy a basketball, and I'm saving the word basketball in a variable. So that when I need to print this later, or when I need to look at what the person wants to buy, I'm just going to go and pull back this variable and it will have saved whatever they want to buy. And then we're going to repeat this. So I'll take this bit of code here and we'll go down. And I won't have another if statement. I'll change this to elif, although Corey from last week used to like to do just loads of if statements.
She likes her if statements, yeah. But we'll go with your strategy here, I think, Damien. But Corey's pretty good though. I think again, it's funny, isn't it? We think it's just the way we think about it. Like you said above, you might have it laid out differently, but it will work.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to think of the ways people do it. So some people might prefer that, but we'll go with elif.
We'll stick with it now. And again, if you wanted to use an else here at the end, you could do that too. But we'll stick with the elifs for the moment. So I've got a surfboard if they select option 3. Okay, and then finally, at the end, I'm just going to print out what they want to buy. Okay, so I'm going to print here a list. So you have selected, and then on the next line, I'm going to print out the item that they want to buy. So item to buy. If I can get this right.
Perfect.
I think I've it all right there. Yeah. So we'll just run it real quick here, guys. And this is kind of recapping some of the stuff that we've done already. None of this is really new yet, but it's going to kind of show you what we're going to need in the future. So we've got our online shop. Select the number of the item you wish to buy. So I want to buy a football, so I'll select number 2, and then you have selected football. Okay, so it doesn't really read great, but we'll kind of work with it. The other thing is here, you can kind of see from that /T, it doesn't write the /T, but it does push in the code. See that way it's indented there and it just looks a little bit neater. It kind of moves it more to the center. But that's just aesthetics. You don't need to worry about that too much. So it's not often you go shopping and you only buy one thing, or I don't know if that's the case with you, Amanda, but it's not with me.
No, I get distracted, especially online, because it keeps suggesting other things and you get a bit carried away sometimes, I think. So but I do.
Yeah, I'd be the same. So like what we could do is we could kind of copy this all here and we could kind of repeat it. So let's say someone wants to buy 2 things. So we give them 2 options to enter numbers. So I might just paste in the code here again. And what this will do, it'll ask me the question twice when I run it now. So we'll run this here. So I want to buy a basketball first. So I'll put in the number 1. And then it's giving me the option again to pick another number. So I'll put in the number 3. And then it says that I have selected a surfboard. So it's forgotten what my first choice was. And maybe, Amanda, you could kind of help us out with this. Or why would that be?
Yeah, so I suppose we really had variables there, didn't we? We're not actually, and we know with variables that they'll store, so they'll update and store the next entry.
Yeah.
So it's not actually building the information, it's actually just replacing what was already there.
Yeah, exactly. So on the first time when we select basketball, it saves basketballs into this variable.
Yeah.
But when we go down here to the next bit and we select surfboard, it throws away what basketball, it forgets that and then puts surfboard into that variable space. So it forgets the first entry. And that's not great if we're trying to build up a number of items and we need to remember lots of them. No. So you might be able to help us out with this. We might go to you, your favorite thing.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I know, and I actually am. People at home probably think I'm pretending, but I'm actually very excited about this. So we are, what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to introduce lists now. So I think, as I was saying to Damien, this is probably more reflective of me as a person in that I love making lists in general. If I'm writing out lists for my to-dos and stuff, when we're shopping, I always love lists. So maybe that's why I have such a passion for it, even in coding. So like Damien said, normally we're buying more than one item. So what we're going to do is we're going to use lists as a nice way to organize all of this information. And we can put multiple pieces of data into a list. Now in Python, basically arrays and lists are very similar. So in other programming languages, you might see a kind of clear separation between lists and arrays, but in Python actually they're quite similar. Okay, so we're going to use the word list kind of to cover off both. All right, so similar to variables, we are going to create a list, but instead of storing it as just one thing as a variable, what we do is we use these square brackets, which you're going to see in a second, to indicate to the program that this is going to be a list. And generally those brackets are empty because it's just, there's nothing inside them, because we're going to be adding multiple things to them. Okay, and when we add things to them, each thing we add is actually called an element. So you often hear the word element used with this, and then each position of that element is called the index. So that's a lot of words, so it can be hard to understand. So we'll have a look at an example now. Now, what kind of throws a spanner in the works is we are so used to counting. When we count upwards, we're used to counting from 1. But in with programming, with our lists, we actually start at 0. That kind of confuses people a little bit, Damien, doesn't it? But when we get the hang of it, it becomes kind of second nature to start at 0 from then on in.
Yeah, it does. Like once you get used to it, you never kind of forget it. And
yeah, and I'd say now at home, if you start making lists and you start at 0, you know you've really been your mindset's really been changed into a programmer's mindset when you start your lists that you write out at 0. So let's have a look at this list. So first of all, we've called our list fruit list. Okay. Equals, and now here's the square brackets I've talked about. Now we've already entered into this list, so unlike what we're going to do in a minute where we get it to build, it's not empty. We've already actually added elements. So there's 4 elements in this list already. Okay, banana, apple, orange, and grapes. There are 4 different elements. So that's the first thing we wanted you to know. And then the second thing is to talk about the element's position or its index, which is so handy. You'll see why in a second, why this is really handy to know and to understand. So because we start at 0, just be thinking at home yourselves now when you're looking at the screen. We can see here that banana, its position, it's the first in the list, so its index is 0. Okay, so this is what you have to remember. You're starting at 0. Apple is 1, orange is 2, and grapes is 3. Okay, so we build up that way. So 0, 1, 2, 3. This is our indexing layout. Okay, so at home now, we're gonna put some up on the screen. We're gonna explain how we can use lists really efficiently. And we might not go into too much of this today. We are going to use lists. We might not go into some of the stuff here, but it's useful to know how the indexes work. So let's have a look at our using lists screen here. So we have fruit list, banana, apple, orange, grapes. So we know that already. So we have 4 elements within our square brackets. So that indicates this is our list. We have a team list, John, Sam, Megan, and Aoife, again within our square brackets, and we have again 4 elements. And then we have our age list, and we have 17, 16, 17, 18, 16, 15, and again within our square brackets. So we have multiple elements in each of these lists. So let's think about what I want you to think at home, because we're going to put the answers up for these in a second. So we input print fruit list, and we want obviously the program to process that input and then give us an output. So I want you to try and think at home about what the outputs for these would be. So print fruit list. So Damien, what the program's going to do there, isn't it? It's going to go and actually look at what is fruit list and print every element of that list. Are we right?
Yeah, I think so, because there's nothing to change. Like, it's just going to print all of whatever's in fruit list.
Exactly. Yeah. Now for these two, I'm going to explain them first. I'm going to get you to even pause for a second and see, can you just figure it out by looking at the screen, and then hit play, and because we're going to call out the answers and show you the answers. So print team list, and then inside here we have a square bracket and 3. Now basically what it's asking you to do is print the element that is at index 3 in this list. Okay, so remembering obviously that you're starting at 0, I want you to now look at that list and think what element is at index 3. Okay, and then our final one is how we can actually slice into lists. So we have our age list. So it's going to be looking at the age list. And what this means is print element 1 up to element 4, but not including element 4. That's really important to remember. So therefore, you will be printing 1, 2, and 3. So again, have a look at that age list for me and see, would you know what would the output be for those? So I'll give you a sec just to pause there and actually think that through. So Damien, we're happy for print fruit list that all the elements will be printed.
Should do.
Yeah. So then for team list, and then we're looking at index 3. If we go up, we're going to have 0 for John, 1 for Sam, 2 for Megan, and 3 should be Aoife. Should be our output there. Yeah. And then we go to our age list, and remember it was 1 up and 2, but not including 4. So 0, 1, so 16 should be first, 17, and 18. And we're not including 4. So we just literally do those 3.
Those 3.
Yeah. So let's just check. So that's what, if hopefully when you're looking there, you figured it out. So that's really useful for us, because in our program, we can use indexing just to quickly pull out the information we need from this compiled set of information in our list, which is really, really useful when we go. So Damien, now that we know roughly how this works, how about we go back to what you were doing there with our shop, and instead of the variable updating and it replacing something, we can actually build on the list we've made there.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. So as Amanda said, there is so much stuff that you can do with lists, but we'll visit it. We'll look at a little bit of it today, and we'll probably look at a little bit more of it next week. But in our example here with our small shop, we're going to add in a couple of lines of code just to get our lists working. So the first thing that we said is we kind of need to have a list ready. And you said at the beginning, Amanda, that often we start with lists and they are empty. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
So we'll create a list here called item list. And to have an empty list, Amanda, we use
square brackets. That's so important, isn't it? That we remember the list is the square brackets.
Yeah. And if you type 1 square bracket, it'll often just give you the close one as well. It's the same with normal brackets. So here we've got our list now ready to go, but there's nothing in there. So we're going to have to learn how we add things to a list. All right. So what we're going to do here is when we've selected our item and we've decided which item it is, so whether it's going to be a basketball, a football, or a surfboard, after we've done all these if and elif parts, we're going to add in one more little line of code here, and it's going to be item list dot append. So if you want to add something to a list, so here we've got our empty list called item list. If I want to add something to that, I put the name of the list down, and then I use the dot append feature of that list. And then in brackets, I put the thing that I want to add. So I'm going to add to the list the item to buy. Okay. And what this should do is it should put whatever I have chosen, whether it's 1 or 2 or 3, a basketball, a football, or a surfboard, into the list. And then that's there, and it can't be removed unless we specifically tell it to be removed, and we might look at that next week. But it won't be forgotten when I change my item to buy in the next piece of code. So we're going to use this line again. Every time we select a new thing to buy, we're going to use this append piece of code again. So let's go down here again. After I picked my second item to buy, I'm going to append that to the list again. And we don't even have to change the variable name here because we've used the same variable. So if in the first item I picked was a basketball, I add basketball to my list. Then if the second item is a football, it will forget it in the variable. It'll forget basketball in the variable and save football there. And then it will add football to the list where basketball is already. Does that make sense, Amanda, or am I explaining that okay?
No, that's spot on. Yeah,
okay.
That makes complete sense.
Great. And then finally, at the end, when we want to print our items, we're just going to say you have selected, and I'm going to print the whole list. So it's going to be item list. So we'll try and run this now. We might have an error or two. I might have made a mistake somewhere, but we'll see how we go. Scroll down here to the bottom. So I'm going to pick a basketball for the first thing that I buy. So that'll be a number 1. And then a surfboard for the second thing that I buy. That'll be number 3. And then we can see that it prints out my list. So it didn't forget the first thing that I purchased, and it's remembering the second thing as well. So we could build on this more and more and more. If I had more items to buy, I could copy this code again. Sorry, I need to go from here down to here where I append it to my list. I could copy this again and paste this in again. We'll do it 4 times. But I'd say now you're thinking that we're repeating a lot of stuff. And if you are thinking that, that's actually really good. So I'm buying 4 things. A football was number 2, then a surfboard was number 3, then a basketball was number 1, and then a football was number 2 again. And it adds all of those things to the list, and that'll keep going and going and going. So there's a bit in that. So if you need to pause that, guys, and maybe take your time trying to get that to work, it would be good to use that time. But if you're happy with that, the only problem with our code now is that we seem to be repeating a whole load of stuff. And Amanda, we talked about this before, that repeating code is kind of, it's not a great thing to do because there's so many ways around it.
Yeah, there is. And I suppose obviously people can think, oh, well, you can copy and paste, but you know, we talked about this before when we talked about functions, actually, that we actually want to condense our code as much as possible. That's kind of what programmers are doing. And this is not condensed, obviously. We have a lot of repetition.
Out a lot of the way,
Yeah. So we'll have a look at loops here, Damien, just to introduce. We've talked about them, but maybe just go through them a little bit, what you think, and then
I think that
see can we apply that. Yeah, okay. So loops, guys, again, if anyone's ever done block-based programming or visual programming, you're probably very familiar with the loop menu, and inside the loop menu, there's a load of different blocks. So if this is going to be kind of similar, you'll get the basic concept of how we can repeat certain sequences of instructions, which what we're saying is it will condense our code. So let's have a look here. So loops are really useful because we can control the number. So the amount of repetition that occurs, we can actually control that if we want. So it's different to a function in that way, because we might decide to use a function at different various points across our code. Remember, we might call in our function, but it might not be in a row. It might not be multiple times in a row. But with a loop, if something is running multiple times in a row, then it makes sense to use it, okay? Now, there's 2 types of loop that we can use in Python, and we're going to look at one of them today. So the first one we're going to look at today is while loops. So we'll explain this in a second, but we also have loops called for loops. So they're the 2 types of loops. Next week, we're going to dive a little bit more into the for loops, Damien, aren't we?
Yeah, we'll have a look at for loops next week, but while loops for today is good.
While loops for today, yeah. And it's similar to our conditionals or our if statements, that we use our keyword, which is while, and then after that, you'll see that we actually, everything is indented, which means it's actually inside the loop. So again, if you think back to visual programming or blocks, you might remember a loop will kind of wrap around the block you're using. You can see I love using my hands. So it's going to be kind of similar that way. So you'll see that inside the loop, the information, the code is going to be indented, okay? So let's have a quick look at an example, but Damien's going to do this out in a second with you as well. So just explain what this is doing. So we're looking at a while loop. Now you can see this is green, which is really a nice visual indicator Python does. We've seen this before, Damien, for our keywords, isn't it?
Yeah, for keywords, yeah.
And so that's the visual cue for you to know that you've done it right. So have a look at this. I'm going to explain what it means now, but if you want to even pause here and see, can you figure out kind of what it means yourself, please do. So while, right, so while random number is not equal to guess. So what's going to happen is we're going to import random, kind of like what we did we've done last weekend for our home challenge this week. We're going to get it to pick a random number, and then we're going to get the user to guess. And we're saying, while the random number that was selected by the program is not equal to the guess, which is going to be from the user, then do this. So what's going to happen is the user inputs a guess, which we're happy with, so integer input. And then we're saying to the program, if the guess is equal to the random number, print you in. So that's perfect. We've seen this before with our conditions. If the guess is not equal to the random number, not equal, sorry, print your guess is wrong, please guess again. Now, say the random number that got generated is 5 and I put in 6 as my guess, okay? What's going to happen is I put in 6 as my guess here. It comes in here and it sees, okay, if the guess is equal to random number, print you win. It knows it wasn't equal to it. So it's going to go past this and it's going to come to here and see if the guess is not equal, what do I do? It will know to say your guess is wrong. And because it's a loop, we will come back up to this top instruction and it's going to still see the random number is still not equal to the guess. So it's going to actually start the whole sequence again. Okay, because I guessed 6, it said it's wrong. It comes back up. It says the random number was 5. You guessed 6. Basically, guess again. Go again. All right. So this is going to keep continuing, Damien, basically, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's really useful.
Keep going round and round.
Yeah. So this is kind of what this was doing, right? So we were using our code. We're getting to pick a random number, asking it to generate one between 1 and 10. Get the user to guess the number, and it'll tell them if they win and stop the program, or if it's wrong, it'll tell them they're wrong, and then they have to keep going until they get it right. So they keep going and guess again. Okay, so Damien is going to, if you guys want to pause, you can maybe try this yourselves if you want first before you see Damien work through the solution. Damien's going to go into notebooks now and, and work through the solution now.
Yeah, so we'll take a look, guys, and hopefully, like at the moment, I'd say we're getting used to writing a bit of code. So if you wanted to give it a try beforehand and see if you can figure it out, that is a really good way to learn too, before even watching it. So we'll fly through the first bits because we would have done this the last day. We're going to import our random library again. And we're going to get the computer to generate the random number. So we'll say random number equals, and it's going to be random dot randint, and it's going to be between 1 and 10. So this should all look kind of familiar. Then we're going to ask the user to guess a number between 1 and 10. But before we do that, well, we'll put in our print statement first. And this is something that you kind of just have to get used to. What do you put just before your loop, and what do you want to repeat over and over again? So we don't want this first line to repeat loads of times. This is kind of the intro to the problem. So this program is a game, and we'll just ask them to guess a random number between 1 and 10. Random number 1 and 10. Okay, so these two pieces of code, they won't repeat over and over, but most of the stuff after this will. So we're going to create a while loop now. So while random number not equal to guess. So exclamation mark and equal sign. Not equal to guess. So here, as long as the guess or the two things are not the same, we're going to keep repeating and repeating and repeating the code that's in here. But there's one problem before we go into our actual while loop. Right now, the computer knows what random number is because we have it up here. We've got random number equals to random.randint between 1 and 10. But it doesn't know what guess is. So if I was to run this now, it would give me an error and say, oh, I don't know what guess is yet. So we have to give guess a value before we can use this. So what I would usually do is I would give the guess a value that random number could never be, so that we know that for the first time round, they won't be equal. So random number is between 1 and 10. So I'm going to say that at the beginning, guess is equal to 0. So that means no matter what random number this chooses here, it won't be equal to 0 because it's not one of the choices. So that means that it will go into the while loop for the first one. Okay, so when we're in the while loop, we want the user to guess a number. So we'll put in our guess equals to int input. So similar to what we had before. And now we got to ask our questions. All right. So the two questions are, is the guess the same as the random number, or is the guess not the same as the random number? So here we could just go with if and else if we wanted to, or we can use elif, whichever we kind of prefer. So if random, right, random number equals 2, and if we're checking that things are equals, we use 2 equal sign, equals to guess, then we're going to print out, well done. Okay, and if they have chosen that, so if we go into this if part, that means that the random number is equal to the guess. So the both numbers are the same. So when it comes out of that if statement and it goes back up to the top of the while loop, random number will be equal to guess. So this condition won't be correct anymore. So the program won't go back into the while loop. It'll stop then. All right. And then the other thing that we have, so we can use else, or we can use elif and have the other condition. I think in the example we used elif. Did we, Amanda?
Yeah, we did in the example there, but you can use else if you want either. Again, it's the same thing.
We'll just go else to have it different, but it does the same thing. So if the things are equal, that's one option, and then the only other option is if the two numbers are not equal. So else, we'll say print, we'll say guess is wrong, comma, please guess again. Okay, now we've got a little program, and you can see that the while loop is there, and all of this stuff that's underneath it is indented. All right, it's pushed in, which means it's part of the while loop. So if I wanted to have a kind of an end line or a finish, I would need to go back down to the bottom of my while loop and go back in against kind of the wall of the coding block. And if I just put in a little print here, so this won't be part of the while loop because it's not indented. Print, and we'll just print game over.
Perfect.
Okay, so we'll run this quickly.
We'll run it out and test it.
Yeah.
So I think as part of the home challenge, Damien, we can actually get people to update their shopping list. What do you think with this? So we'll just test this works first, and then we can see, can people do this for next week and update their shopping list? Yeah, sure.
So we'll guess this. So guess a random number between 1 and 10. Amanda, give me a guess there.
6.
So we guessed 6, and you guessed wrong. So it's asking you to guess again there.
3.
Wrong again. We could be here all day.
Yeah, 8.
8.
We may need to narrow the parameters here.
Might need to.
Yeah, keep going through it.
So guess 6, 9, 10. Oh, I don't actually know what the number is here. Did I miss one?
7.
Ah, last one. Okay, so the last number that we guessed there was the correct number. So hopefully you'll be a little bit more lucky than Amanda and I were there. But yeah, so the program works, and it'll keep going around and around and around until we get our random number to be the same as the guess.
Perfect.
Yeah. So with that, with our while loops and with our lists, Amanda, do you think that people would be able to kind of update their shopping list to incorporate both of those?
Yeah, I think we'll go over what we learned now, and then I think for the home challenge, what we'll ask you guys to do is actually try that out. It's okay. Obviously, we're all learning here. So if you're struggling with it, but based on what you would have just done there, if you need to go back and do that out with Damien and think through, and then apply it back up to your list and think, instead of us actually copying and pasting all that code, could we use a while loop to actually condense the code and still get it to work the exact same? I think people will be able for that, Damien. What do you think?
Yeah, give it a try and see.
Give it a shot. Yeah, and obviously, like always, at the start of next week, we'll go back into our shopping list as well, and we'll do it with you so that you can see how it works. But well done. We've covered a lot there. We've introduced loops as well, because we are going to build on that next week. So apart from introducing lists, which is a kind of big enough concept in itself, we've looked at loops. So what have we learned? So we've learned that lists are obviously used to compile information into an organized but flexible structure, because you've seen there they're flexible in that they can be empty and they can build and build and build and build. And we might not get to it in these initial tutorials, but lists are really handy, Damien, aren't they? You can sort them alphabetically, you can remove things, you can pop the lists, you can do lots of things with them, can't you? So they can be
so
really
many different things.
You can see why I'm so excited by them. So remember, each part of the list inside our square brackets, each part of our list is an element, and then each element's position is called its index. And remember, the index starts at 0, and then you will count across to kind of understand that. Then we looked at loops, and we looked at how they're going to be a really handy way for us to repeat instructions. There's 2 types, remember, there's for loops and while loops. And today we looked at while loops. So hopefully you've got a flavor of them there. So again, you can go back and you can work with them. And then we didn't really kind of call this out, Damien, but while loops, actually, we can talk about things like while true and while false, can't we? So we probably look at that. And that's kind of an interesting way of us bringing in Boolean data types, which we talked about before as the data type, and really it's going to be true or false. So it's looking at one or the other. So we'll look at that again next week, Damien, won't we?
Yeah, we'll make sure to check in on that again.
Yeah. So for your home challenge, guys, if you can kind of go back to your shopping list and actually try and add in your while loop now, like we said, to condense the code, that would be great. I'm going to just check here and see if there's any questions. There's actually a question, Damien, really quickly, because I know we're kind of tight in time here, but about forever. So I'd say someone who's done a lot of visual programming has seen that there's a forever block, but actually our while true loops are kind of the same, aren't they?
Yeah. So yeah, like we can use them. Yeah. And in Python, it'll kind of just be one script at a time, or what we're dealing with now. So when you're using block codes, one thing can be running in the background while another piece of code can be running at the same time. So your forever block can be doing something, and something else might be able to, definitely in Scratch that can work, and maybe in microbits as well. So we can make a forever block out of a while loop, if you need to. So your while true kind of would work in that way. Yeah,
I suppose that's the closest match. But good point, actually, because that is technically a way of looping something over and over and over again. And it's actually the idea of an infinite loop, and we might talk about that next week. So yeah, we're doing lots about all this stuff next week. So that was really, really good work, everyone. Thanks so much again. Well done, lesson 5. Next week is our last lesson, unfortunately, in our introduction to programming with Python. Final lesson 6. We'll wrap everything up, and hopefully then by the end of next week you're going to have a really good understanding, and maybe you can go and build on that even more. But we'll see you next week. Thanks so much, and take care.
Thanks everybody. Bye now.